Great. And thank you for participating in that chat box. Let me open this up. And thank you for having me here. I have followed, of course, Accountable Now for a while as a member of our health community. So I'm very pleased and honored that you're asking to hear a little bit more about this experience within World Vision. And it's good to see a few of my World Vision colleagues on the call. So thank you for being here. All right, just a little bit about me. My name is Sarah Kress, and I am an accidental World Vision knowledge management specialist. Well, as I think about it, I'm not so accidental anymore. I've been doing this job now for over a decade, so maybe I have to now say I'm an intentional knowledge management specialist within World Vision, and what that means I'll get to in a couple of slides. Just in case you are not familiar with World Vision and what we do, every day, more than 42,000 World Vision staff in about 99 countries across the globe work towards sustained well-being of children. We work on things like healthcare and education systems. We respond to disasters. We're advocates for child protection and improved and government responsibility for the world's most vulnerable families. We've been in business for over the last 60 years. And over those last 60 years, we've gathered up a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge within World Vision. But only recently, in the last decade or so, was there ever an intentional, official knowledge management plan? Do you know the term federated network? This is something we describe ourselves as. And quite simply, there are 99 World Visions in the world, and they run under separate leadership. And talking to each other, honestly, it's not mandatory. So this is where I came into World Vision, where knowledge management has come into World Vision, getting our 42,000 employees to understand the value of talking across borders, and even better, learning and sharing our experiences with one another. So the story I tell you today is one of my experience, our journey to failure. How did I, Sarah Kress, get into this failure journey? How did the health and nutrition team, which I work within, how did we get into failure? And then leading into a larger global failure campaign within World Vision. But it is not my story alone. So I tell it from my perspective and my experience, but I have the honor of working on a passionate and dedicated group of knowledge management professionals, pushing the envelope of excellence toward open communication and accountability, not only to one another, but to the communities that we serve. So I'm going to take you back 11 years ago when I came across the World Vision job advertisement for my position in knowledge management. It read something like this: join a brand new, oh, I noticed this is sitting here, I'll give you that. Join a brand new global health community, working towards improving program through vetting and understanding global cutting edge research, connecting with staff to share our best practices. To me, this sounded like the perfect job. To me, this sounded like dropping into the best public health cocktail party where I get to be the well-read hostess. When I came to World Vision, what I learned is that we had a freshly minted global health strategy that had not yet been circulated. We knew we had global health programming in most of our 100 country offices, but we had not yet built any mechanism globally to track where or what these programmings were. We didn't even have a directory of people working on these programs. So my global cocktail party was missing a guest list, so I got to work. If you've met me before, you will have heard me say that I am part of the best team in World Vision. I know Ellie and Daniel are here and they're part of the accountability team, and they may try to tell you that they have the best team in World Vision, but no, trust me, this is truth. The health and nutrition team, They're an extended family, and they were inspired by the idea of sharing best practice with one another. My leadership recognized the challenges we had in knowledge management and sharing our information with one another, not to mention that challenge of sharing information outside of World Vision to our peers and partners. And our team set out to identify our stakeholders for global health and to understand new research and to connect with one another so our best practices could be replicated. So today I have a story about how our knowledge management agenda led us to that F word. Well, you know, the other F word, fail. How our best practices, we started talking about our failed practices. This was a couple of years ago, this photo. In fact, I had just celebrated 7 years at World Vision. This is a small number, 100, about, of our World Vision Global Health Community of Practice, a connected network of global health stakeholders within World Vision. We were in Bangkok. We were in a large meeting room, and we were at the end of our global face-to-face learning event. Just after this photo was we were going to sit in a circle in this room and have a reflection on how the week had gone. At this point, I was pretty smug about what I had accomplished over 7 years. We finally had a network of professionals who spoke to one another. We were a professional yet approachable KM program. We were seeing the fruits of our labor. Subject matter expert databases, programming maps, knowledge maps. We had an intranet connecting people to resources. We were communicating not only between each other regularly, but we had also started building an external cohort of participants, sharing our best practices and improving our program. So we sat in a circle, and my reflection question was something like this. What are you going to take back with you to work on next week that you've learned here in this meeting? And yeah, what's the best thing that you've learned? And then I saw it. I saw a raised hand from this guy. He raised his hand. I handed him the microphone. The owner of this hand was a senior director in our organization. His name was Stefan. He's brilliant. He's engaged. He was our proverbial pot stirrer. He leaned into the microphone and said, I'll never forget it. This has been a great week of sharing our best practice. We have gotten really good at sharing good news with each other. What I haven't heard in this week is where we have failed. Why is that? We will not reach our potential until we can understand our failure. And then he handed the microphone back. This moment was the beginning of the global health community of practice within World Vision. This was the beginning of our exploration into the F word. Well, that popped my personal bubble. I mean, come on. I was thinking nowhere in that job advert that I saw in the years previous did it say, or never on my work plan appeared, that knowledge management should be coming together to talk about failure. We've been doing so great. Had a waiting list of offices, and I still do, of offices who are wanting to share their best practices and lessons learned in our global business. And I was starting to wonder, had I failed at my knowledge management role? Failure and applying learning from failure became the new frontier for us within the knowledge management team. So I took this learning back from my face-to-face meeting and came back to our knowledge management team, and we started exploring the idea of failure. Was anyone within World Vision talking about failure? Not that we could see. Were our bosses asking us where we had learned from failure, or where we were, as our failure contemporaries like to say, are we failing for? No. Watching as your polling came in through the, are your bosses asking you where you have failed in the last year? And I think I saw one yes or no. Because my boss is asking me about my failures in my after action, my annual review. So yes, it's not common for managers to ask us about failures. So shortly after the health and nutrition face-to-face meeting where you saw that picture, we started to prepare for our WASH meeting, water, sanitation, and hygiene community meeting. And we decided that if we were going to start talking about failure, expecting a level of vulnerability, that we needed to start with our leadership, to lead by example. So we, again, this WASH community practice meeting was going to be face-to-face in a closed conference room. And we asked our WASH leadership, all regional WASH leads, as well as our global directors, to sit up at the front of the room and asked them this question, actually: what has kept you up at night? What has been a failure of yours? And what did you learn from it? And we decided to add a catchy title that's very WASH to this session for participation and to guarantee attention to the audience. I tell you, my hat, I'm always, when I think back to this moment, I'm just very proud of our WASH leaders. They immediately, when we presented the session idea, they were like, yes, let's do this. They sat up in the front of the room and shared where they had failed in the last year and what they were learning from it. Bravo to them. This was one team, about 90 people in the room. We were feeling pretty good. We only had 45,000 or 41,910 staff left to go on this journey of being vulnerable and learning from failure. In fact, the KM group that worked on this session, we were so confident that this was such a start. We were like, let's take this global after one session. So we came back and we put together a working group and decided what was going to be our intention of this working group on failure. And the goals for this failure working group were about encouraging our community of practice members not to share just best practice, but also to be able to share intentionally failures and learnings of those failures. We believe that if we look at our failures, we would see more innovation. And we had always wanted to be a professional and approachable community of practice. So this failure discussion campaign was going to continue our journey of pursuing an open culture of sharing. We looked around at what some other organizations had done, and we decided that our global World Vision Failure campaign would be titled Fail Fest. Looking back, even the name got off to a bit of a rocky start. Several in the group thought that fail was just a little too harsh. Can't we call it Learning Fest? I got that suggestion. Or can we please call it Love to Learn Month? I have to admit, I was one vehemently pounding my hand on the table saying, no, we cannot. Let's not soften this. We are talking about failure, the F word. Let's get used to it. There was concern that the word fail would not be terminology and would alienate several cultures and offices in our organization. In the end, Fail Fest went out. We decided we would try it out, test it. We decided to have Fail Fest in February because, well, we thought the alliteration was irresistible. And we saw a very good hashtag potential for the month. I heart failure. The working group decided that the best way to go about a failure campaign would be to work through our global communities of practice within World Vision. COPs, as we call them, are a pillar program within our knowledge management strategy. And at the time, we had about 20 active communities. These were networks that had existing chat rooms, newsletters. We meet monthly or quarterly in a webinar room much like this to discuss our programming. Some, like my global health community of practice, we have started to include external participants, people outside of World Vision, in our meetings, in our events. But it was immediately decided, no, there's been no external participation. This is going to be an internal event. And our intention was to engage all of these communities, people who were already part of these communities, into this campaign. But we decided to let our, to let our communities of practice opt in or opt out. And several did opt out. Why, do you ask? Well, some groups were going through restructure and some redundancies were happening at the time, and sensitivities. The timing was just a bit insensitive. We had a few new leaders in our communities of practice, and they weren't quite ready for this challenge, and I'm sure some thought that we were just a little bit nuts. We decided that Fail Fest was going to be totally virtual so that staff from all parts of the globe could participate. One of the first things we had to do was define what is failure. So we chose this definition of fail: to fall short of success or achievement, to be unsuccessful in the performance or completion of something. We wanted failures from small, just miss the mark, or feel free to send in something disastrous if something completely failed. We defined the rules. It's fairly simple. You needed to go online to our intranet FailFest webpage and to share a failure of yours. No finger pointing. And please explain what your learning was and how you feel it is best applied to current business. We created an online form on our intranet where participants filled in their failure and their learning. You had to write in your name. And yes, your failure was going to be visible to anyone who came to the FailFest page. Scary stuff. To eliminate the intimidation of being the first person to write down a failure, I went back to Stefan, that hand owner from our global community of practice meeting for health, and I asked him to submit his entry a day early so that when the world came to the FailFest page, his failure would be the first thing they would see. And yes, we encouraged brave souls, our opinionated leaders who thought that this FailFest idea was a great idea. We encouraged them to be some of our first responders. So did Stefan do it? Of course he did. He was happy to lead the way. The word about FailFest was circulated by a well-planned email and web advertising campaign through our communities of practice. We hosted a global kickoff webinar where our CEO and 2 of our vice presidents shared a recent failure. And with that, our FailFest was launched. At this point, I know it probably wasn't just me, but I was nervous. And I shared that I was nervous with the working group. What if nobody participated and Stefan's answer to the FailFest form was the only one we saw? And then we thought, well, hey, at the end of this 3 weeks time, if nobody participates, then we can write in our own entry, our own failure. So we did leave the FailFest form open for 3 weeks, and we sent reminder emails each week out to the participating communities of practice. So what were our results? We had 13 of our 20 COPs opt in. And we had FailFest entries, some many, some few, from each of those 13 weeks of practice. Were we overwhelmed by response numbers? No. But I was humbled by the vulnerability and the honesty in the responses that we did receive. I know everybody wants to ask, how many, Sarah? I think we had just short of 35 responses. Our respondents covered issues of accountability to our donors, sustainability within our communities, process issues, budget mistakes. We had submissions from rural field workers in Sri Lanka and submissions from the CEOs of our European fundraising offices. And you know what? The value of their learning, no matter if you were that field worker or CEO, they were equal. It was just the honesty. It was just inspiring. We put together a panel of judges to award the best failure. Each community of practice shared the FailFest entries associated with their sector. So each of us were responsible for circulating all of the learnings of the failures that were shared. Our sector leader or sector vice president, whichever you had, wrote a personal email, a reflection and response to each of our FailFest contributing authors. Their reflection acknowledged the bravery in telling their story, and it illustrated how this new knowledge and learning was going to be considered as in part of our programming decisions. So yeah, you got it. If you were a FailFest person, you get an individual letter from your vice president thanking you. We thought that was an important reward. We had a closing ceremony where we gave out virtual kudos to all of our brave year one participants. And the 3 best failure submissions, who you see here on the screen, presented their story to our organization. The top failure submission was the CEO from World Vision Finland. As she concluded her failure presentation, she said, "This is an extremely important exercise and skill to have, learning from failures. I am thankful for FailFest, and I will plan to submit my failures each and every year." For us, this was not a bad way to end our new campaign, but there was still work to do because we had questions. Why, with our fervent promotion of FailFest, our executive leadership buy-in and participation, and clearly good reasons to move into the area of learning from failure, why did we have such a tiny fraction of our? So we decided to send out a "Why did you fail to participate?" survey. This one allowed for anonymity, and of course, because you don't have to put your name on this survey, we got more than double the results. Here is what they said to us. They said, "I failed to participate because I wanted to sit back and see how this year was going to play out. I was not sure if it was worth the time. Is the organization really going to change because I participated?" Others said, "The ask was far too open. What kind of failure? Any failure? I didn't know what you were looking for." And others said, "I was afraid of the consequences of sharing my failure stories for my own job security, as well as the fact that our projects involve more than one person and often more than one team." The survey also asked, should we continue FailFest? And if we do, what is your advice to make it better? I personally was nervous to see this answer. This is the advice they gave us. No more open calls for failure. Focus each year of FailFest on a specific area of our work. Be clear how this process feeds into decision making. Show us the value for our vulnerability. In such a large organization, having a global fail fest is too high. We need to do this locally, and we should even do this within our own teams so that we can see faster, visible results of sharing our failure. We had several managers write in saying, we have not been trained on how to do this. We don't know how to lead this discussion. Can you help us? But as I read through the responses, we started to see skepticism and uncovering issues of trust. We found gaps in leadership expectations and training, but overall and overwhelmingly, we saw that the advice was to keep going, keep moving. Let's keep trying this journey of learning from failure. So, have we fixed all these issues of trust and the lack of knowledge? I don't know yet. This story still continues. We're working on it. So people ask, are you doing a global fail fest each year? And the answer is no. Now, we tried to do it again last year. It is getting postponed. We've had changes in KM leadership, and our new KM leader is open to the idea. We've not sat still. We are working on it. We took this reflection back to our communities of practice and said, what can we do? So if you are going to present a global health community of practice, if you're on a waiting list of offices to share their work, you have to address project failed. What have you learned from failure in this project? We're making it normal to hear the F word in our community. We are increasing the use of after action reviews, another knowledge management staple that hadn't really been introduced yet into World Vision prior to FailFest. And after action review, we're modeling and training teams on how to lead critical discussions about what went wrong and are learning from failure. We're establishing small, targeted discussion groups among our implementers so that we can continue to build trust among ourselves. So, FailFest 2018 did not happen, but I look forward to FailFest 2019 within World Vision, and we're thinking about starting regionally first, taking the advice of our participants saying, let's start more locally and build up, cascade up to a global learning event. Did you know that there is an International Day for Failure? It's October 13th actually, so next week. So October 2019 sounds like a pretty good target date for our next FailFest. So we continue our failure journey, and I invite those of you on this call into exploration with us so that we can learn from one another and our experiences as we share. Thank you for listening to our story, and thank you for being here with us today. And I look forward to learning more from you for the rest of this webinar.